Right,
members, we've got a quorum already. So, I now call the meeting to order. So, this is the proposed resolution under Section 5, Bracket 4 of the Motor Vehicles First Registration Tax Ordinance. And this subcommittee needs to elect a chairman first. Any nominations, please? Mr. Alan Leung. I do not want to accept the nomination. I nominate Mr. Fernando Zhang. Do you accept the nomination? Yes. Any other nominations, please? So Mr. Fernando Zhang is elected chairman of the subcommittee. So please come here to chair the meeting. Do we need a deputy chairman? No? So I think we can start. Let's invite the administration in.
係。政府已經撤回咗19號move 呢個 motion 嗰個通知啦，咁佢就會26號知道，文件都有講。歡迎政府代表啊。
So I would like to welcome the administration's team. This resolution is about extending the exemption for electric vehicles. This exemption has been implemented for some time. The purpose is to promote environmental protection. I believe members do support the measure. But then I have some concerns here. We now have electric race cars in the market, and generally they are regarded as luxury cars or items. So will the owners of these race cars also enjoy the FRT exemption? I understand that the purpose is to promote environmental protection, but will the measure also facilitate or help rich people purchase their toys? I understand that there are more of such race cars in the market, and last year Tesla received about 300 orders from Hong Kong. And after the resolution has been passed, and the price list will be out, and the vehicles will be delivered. So can you give us more details about the proposed scheme, and can you also try to address the concern I've just raised, Mr. Mock? Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Electric vehicles do not emit exhaust fumes, and so air quality can be improved. In fact, around the world there are different incentives to attract people to switch to electric vehicles. As the chairman has pointed out, since 1994, we have been exempting electric vehicles from FRT. At the same time, we are also trying very hard to promote the wider use of electric vehicles. Recently, we've seen wider use of electric vehicles, but electric vehicles electric vehicles are still more expensive than conventional vehicles, and prospective owners have certain concerns, like whether the battery is durable or not. And so we think we will continue to need this exemption to try to promote the wider use of electric vehicles. Chairman, you said that some companies had launched the luxury type of electric vehicles. Perhaps I can explain the relationship between the price of electric vehicles and the design of such vehicles. Undeniably, the price of electric vehicles is high because of the small production. We need to build up confidence among users in relation to electric vehicles, and also manufacturers need to launch as many such vehicles as possible so as to gather more feedback about the performance of such vehicles and then to make improvements. So we'll not differentiate between electric vehicles that can be exempted and those that cannot be exempted. The reason is as follows. Say if a manufacturer produces an electric vehicle, which is a private vehicle, the manufacturer may feel that the performance is satisfactory, and as a result the design may be applied to other types of vehicles, for example, taxis or commercial vehicles. So we're talking about the promotion of technological development. Let me say a bit more about the price. Electric vehicles are more expensive because of the smaller amount of production and also because of the better performance, for example, in climbing slopes and so on and so forth. And the manufacturer may decide to apply such technologies to other types of vehicles, for example, lorries or goods vans. And then the technology may also be transferred to other vehicle types like taxis. And because of the better performance of such vehicles, the price is understandably higher. And that will help to promote the technology in relation to electric vehicles. So we are proposing to exempt electric vehicles from FRT across the board. But then this extension is for 3 years only. And before the expiry of the resolution, we'll review the situation to see whether we are really achieving our objective. All right, I'll see whether members have got any questions. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, thank you. Yes, we understand that the wider use of electric vehicles will mean that there will be less air pollution and better air quality. Now, I have no objection to the principle, but I want the administration to give us more information concerning the concept of cleaner fuel. Yes, you are promoting the use of electric vehicles. Are there other types of vehicles available in Hong Kong or other parts of the world other than electric vehicles? And if we don't have such vehicles in Hong Kong, can we consider introducing such vehicles into Hong Kong? I mean, vehicles running on cleaner fuel. And then second question. I think the greatest concern surrounding electric vehicles is the disposal of the batteries. So in the past 5 years, or since we had the FRT exemption for electric vehicles, how have the batteries been disposed of and where?
We believe as this develops, this will just become a bigger problem. Number 3, just now the chairman asked about electric cars. But then there are other types that the transport department doesn't seem to like, and that is electric bikes. Even if they comply with all the policy conditions, they may have to comply with very specific conditions. So even if they are climbing like at 25 kilometers as speed, you will not allow them. So I'd like to know whether you can introduce cleaner fuel for our vehicles so as to cleanse the air. Do you have a policy or even a direction so that the TD will help the EPD do its job? Why do people have to go for diesel motorbikes instead of electric bikes? Now, I know I may be venturing outside the scope of our discussion, but if we are still discussing the policy part, then perhaps Mr. Mok can give us more information. Thank you. Number 1, if you are talking about clean fuel that does not cause any emission at all, there are other types instead of just the electric car. We have the fuel battery cars. Now, what fuel does it use? It uses hydrogen, which goes through a fuel battery to produce energy. What is produced is moisture. But then this is so expensive. In the past 10 years or so, we just call it technology for tomorrow because it is so expensive and it is requiring a lot of technology. Some people are experimenting it elsewhere, but it will be difficult for Hong Kong to experiment with it. You need to first of all set up a hydrogen energy system, and even with LPG refuel stations, that has not been easy at all because of the densely populated nature of Hong Kong. So I believe we should just go for electric cars for the moment. Number 2, disposal of batteries. The electric car suppliers always tell us that they can recycle the batteries for other uses. This is because when the battery is not fit for promoting or propelling an electric car, there is still electricity in the battery. So they think it may still be used for immobile machinery. In any case, in fact, the suppliers now also help to recycle the battery. But batteries now belong to the scope of chemical waste, and it has to be disposed of in an appropriate manner. Now, if the batteries can be used for immobile machinery, the batteries are still of value, and the EV supplier would still want to recycle them. I do not have the exact number of batteries disposed of. Later on at the EA panel, we can provide the figures. Number 3, electric bikes. In order to promote EVs, we have a special website for it. And on that website, we have carried 8 brands of electric bikes. If some people would like to use electric bikes, they can consider those 8 brands. Mr. Wu, you said that the TD might think that there may be traffic safety considerations, and that is why the TD has not given approval to the electric bikes. But if citizens would like to use those, they can find the information on our website. Mr. Wu, a short follow-up. The first question, Mr. Mok, I hope you can provide me with more information. You know, we have LPG taxis and LPG cars. They are not totally pollution-free. It is just that they are not as polluting as petrol or diesel-driven vehicles. So information-wise, I hope you will provide more, and I hope the Bureau will not constrain yourselves just to EVs, because you also have a charging process where there is also carbon output. Are you saying that actually electric bikes are in the market, that they can be licensed by the TD? Are you saying that those 8 brands of electric bikes on your website can be licensed by the ED? I'm talking about electric bikes. Or are you talking about electric motorbikes? Yes, there are electric motorcycles, and electric bikes are a different matter. Mr. Wu is talking about electric bikes. I'm talking about battery-driven bicycles. The TD does have safety concerns. They do not allow electric bikes to use our roads because of road safety concerns. Now, I cannot really give a full explanation on their behalf, but my understanding is they have not issued licenses because of road safety concerns. Sorry, Chairman, please allow me to follow up again. I have read a report that the TD thinks that the electric bikes are too slow. That is why they wouldn't like them to be used on our roads. But as far as I know, the electric bikes can now go at a rather high speed. But then, of course, there may be the risk of them going at a very high speed. So this will also cause your work to be less than ideal, because in fact there are these electric bikes on the market and you also feature them on your website. But then there is a difference of opinion between government departments, and so what you want to do cannot be done. We are talking about providing FRT exemption to EVs. Can I please ask for a figure? I am talking about outside the government. How many EVs have been registered? I think you have the figure. Can you give me the trend starting from 1994 when you first provided the exemption? Chairman, can I answer that question? In 1994, there was a very small number only. I have figures for 2010. In 2010, there were 74 registered EVs only. In 2011, 242. This year, 592. Now, I'd like to say more about electric bikes. If you ask for a full explanation, I'm sure I have to leave that to the TD. But I think their consideration is really about road safety and also road use. If the bikes are used on the roads, they may take up road space, etc. Let me propose that at the EA panel, we can talk about all related issues about electric bikes. And we can also ask the TD to come along to explain why they wouldn't like to issue licenses to some electric vehicles. I think this should go to the transport panel. Well, maybe the two panels should both talk about this, because the EAP is very concerned about air pollution. You know, now there are these bikes, but they can't be used. So I think as the Environment Bureau, you should also double your efforts in promoting them. And if the TD says they are not safe, is that really that they are not safe, or are they exaggerating things? So I hope Mr. Mock can confirm this point. We should take up the issue at the EA panel or even at a joint panel meeting. I agree. I am aware of a news report where a man sells bikes, but he is not given a license for using an electric bike. So he used the bike on the road and then he called the police himself. Is that civil disobedience? Asked Mr. Wu. Well, this is quite ridiculous. As Mr. Wu said, it is also good for the environment. Bikes are good for the environment, so are electric bikes. And I think we should encourage their use. Anyway, this has ventured outside the scope of our discussion today. Let's ask the panel to follow up. Mr. Mock, you said that there are 8 brands of electric bikes. And in fact, they are also exempted under this resolution. Is that right? Yes. Yes. Okay, thank you. Mr. Frankie Yik. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Director, the latest figure is 592 because they have been expensive and there was not a lot of choice, but now there are more brands to choose from, and I'm sure more people will be using these EVs. Starting from 2011 in April, there will be waiver for newly built buildings if they also provide charging stations. And also you have amended the buildings ordinance that 30% of the parking spaces must be installed with standard chargers. In the past 2 years, there has been some increase. However, the base figure is still more and small, and so the number is very small compared to the entire population. How can you popularize EVs? You have exempted the FRT for over 10 years, but the progress is very slow. So, you know, if you look at taxis, they can't really get charging stations. You can do it at home if you are not in a hurry. So what else can you do apart from continuing to exempt FRT as an incentive? What about the infrastructure? Do you have a comprehensive plan to further promote EVs? Have you looked at what other countries do? We have different living conditions. Can we take reference from any overseas experience? And also, I'm interested in what Mr. Wu talked about, and that is recycling of the battery. EVs have been in Hong Kong for 10 years, but of course the number is still small, and I believe people would go back to the dealer to replace the battery, and the battery may very well go back to the manufacturer. Let us assume that they deal with the battery in an appropriate manner. But later on, if EVs are popularized, then there may be OEM suppliers in the market. It's just like, you know, replacing a tire when people replace the battery. And would it be like plastic bottles now recycled? In fact, people would have a contractor collecting them from the bins, but then they are just handed over to another contractor to be dumped in a landfill. So do you follow up what is done about the batteries? Are they dealt with in the right manner so that they do not pollute the environment? Mr. Mock, thank you for the questions. First of all, charging facilities. I must say that on a technical level, batteries have developed somewhat. Europe has its own system. Japan has its own system. The US and Japan may have similar systems.
And then the mainland has its own system. So we are faced with many different systems. And if we are to provide a charging network, then which system should we adopt? Some people may say, let the government decide. But we don't have a car manufacturing industry here in Hong Kong. So we have to look at what the main sources are, so to speak. But at the same time, we want to promote the use of electric vehicles in Hong Kong. And it is essential that there are adequate charging facilities. We have about 1,000 standard chargers. But then the charging may take 8 hours to complete. We've approached some EV manufacturers. We have asked them what we should do in the absence of a uniform system. The standard ones are 13 M, and then the medium chargers 32 M. So the speed can be increased by 60%. So for the new batch of vehicles from Japan or from Europe, they can make use of the medium chargers. That is why in his policy address, the CE says that 100 medium chargers will be provided in various districts to shorten charging time. So medium chargers can, to a certain extent, solve the problem. And then taxis. If we want electric vehicles to be used as taxis, and of course the issue of chargers is very important. In fact, we've chosen 6 transport department car parks, and we've recently had a meeting with the taxi trade. And we are trying to install quick chargers at such car parks. We hope that this can happen in the 4th quarter of this year. And then for medium chargers, we hope that they will be available in the middle of this year or in the 3rd quarter of this year. I just wish to supplement. In fact, I have talked to some people recently. There are companies in Hong Kong producing chargers, and they say that there are universal adapters available. So I can pass the information to you. So it's like a power pack for a mobile phone. I understand that such technologies are available in the market now. I understand that there are different systems. We have the mainland system, we have the European system, we also have the Japanese system. So we can't have 4 chargers installed. So perhaps the car owners can make use of adapters. I understand that there are people studying this. Perhaps I can ask you for the information after the meeting, but I understand that there are people studying this in Hong Kong. We only have a few hundred electric vehicles running on our roads. I understand that we need to formulate a long-term policy on EVs. Batteries are covered by our chemical waste treatment ordinance. They can't be disposed of carelessly, and we do have a tracking system. And in fact, we have hybrid vehicles running on high-tech batteries, and I understand that such batteries are recovered by the manufacturers for recycling purpose or reuse purpose. In fact, to these manufacturers, there is a value in recovering and recycling such high-tech batteries. Yes, I understand that the technology is there. But you have to make sure that batteries are disposed of properly, because you don't know, sometimes the contractor may subcontract to work to another party. Yes, we will of course be concerned about the disposal of the batteries. Yes, the transport department should take a look at this. You are providing incentives, and if your incentives are attractive enough to people, then there will be a lot of batteries to be disposed of. So we hope to promote environmental protection in encouraging the use of EVs, but we do not want the disposal of batteries to pollute our environment. According to the suppliers, the ideal situation would be to recover the batteries, but of course we have to clarify whether these batteries do have a reuse and recycling value to the suppliers. So we will monitor the situation. Thank you. We also hope that electric vehicles can be used as taxis. I hope that you can tell the transport department that there are very few barrier-free taxis in Hong Kong. The constraint is the type of fuel. I understand that there are barrier-free taxi prototypes available, but there aren't any barrier-free LPG taxi prototypes available. So in Hong Kong, we have really very few barrier-free taxis. Hong Kong is an international city, and we are really far lagging behind in this regard. So please ask the Transport Department to promote the use of barrier-free taxis in Hong Kong. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. It seems that the EPD doesn't really know how and where the batteries of EVs are disposed of. And of course, we also have batteries powering mobile phones. On the average, one person in Hong Kong possesses 2 mobile phones. And so a lot of batteries have to be disposed of. So Mr. Mok, we are of course concerned about the disposal of batteries of EVs, as well as the general problem of disposal of batteries. I understand that today batteries that are no longer used still have a value, because there are a lot of precious metals in the batteries. I hope that Mr. Mok can provide further information to the EA panel at a later date. For EVs, I think there are 2 possibilities. One is vehicles running on batteries, and the other is the technology used by bus companies. I just want to know whether the test has also been conducted on minibuses, especially green minibuses, because green minibuses operate in a similar manner to buses, in the sense that they run scheduled routes. So I would just want to know whether there are hybrid vehicles used as buses and also as minibuses, especially green minibuses. So we hope that we will have minibuses which are powered by LPG as well as other fuel. I understand that Mr. Mock has said that in fact LPG may also cause some air pollution. And so I think you should try to promote fuel alternative to LPG. Mr. Mock, taxis, or rather minibuses, either run on LPG or diesel. The minibus trade has said that it would also it also prefers cleaner fuel, and I understand that a manufacturer has launched a hybrid minibus. And an application has been received for a trial to be conducted on the hybrid minibus under the Pilot Green Transport Fund. In fact, over a decade ago, the minibus trade did try out electric minibuses powered by batteries. Yes, but then at that time technology was less advanced, and the trade complained that the charging time was really too long. So the trade is now looking at hybrid minibuses, and if there are new types of vehicles available, I'm sure the trade would apply to the Pilot Green Transport Fund for a trial. And then concerning the super capacity or capacitor, these are the larger buses, the larger vehicles. And so these are not used as minibuses. But I understand that technologically it's feasible. It is just that no supplier has been able to supply this type of vehicles for trial. But in fact, we are encouraging the minibus trade to make use of the Pilot Green Transport Fund to try out green technologies. And in fact, we've already asked the trade to try out battery-powered minibuses as well as capacitance vehicles, if available. Right back to my original concern. So I have looked at the Tesla Hong Kong race car website or sports car website. And it says that some concessions are to be anticipated. And for one particular model, there will be savings of about 460,000. And there is another more expensive model, and it says in their website that savings can be up to 673,000 odd. So for the cheaper vehicle I've mentioned, in fact, the price should have been 1.04 million. And the more expensive one, 1.43 million. So both are sports cars, and they should cost or should have cost over $1 million. And if we extend the FRT exemption for EVs for 3 years, then given that Tesla has already received 300 orders for these two types of sports cars already, then what we are doing may be subsidizing rich people who are willing to spend $1 million or even more on sports cars. I saying these are luxury items, but then we'll be using taxpayers' money to subsidize them, $460,000 or even $673,000. Is this our intention behind this particular measure? Yes, directly said that the manufacturer needs to launch different products in the market and then improve their technology and effect technology transfer.
And sooner or later, this can all help to promote EVs as a whole. Of course, we can trust you to be telling the truth, but we are making use of public money here. We have to consider whether we should continue to subsidize the purchase of luxury products. The FS is talking about a possible structural deficit, and we lack resources in many aspects. However, we are providing exemption to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. You have to give us the figures. Out of the 592 EVs now in use, about 200 are within the government. What about the remaining 400? I believe most of them should be the common saloon car. I do not know whether in Hong Kong we have electric sports cars like Tesla, and that they are also benefiting from FRT exemption. Maybe no, but I'm sure there will be some. I think you really have to give this some thought. I personally object to using public money to subsidize the rich and famous to buy a toy. I think we have to limit what the EVs are used for. If it is for public transport, then of course as a private saloon car, or if it is a van or a lorry, it's all right. But if it is a luxury product that is really only for pleasure, then perhaps we should not give the subsidy. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the view. I made the point that we can see that some EV producers are producing saloon cars, and if the technical requirement is not so high, they can transfer the technology to a vehicle type which requires high technology. I should not name the brand, but maybe we are talking about high performance cars like sports cars. And the high performance technology so used can be commercialized. Now, in that process, there is another important point. We would like to complement the development of the EV technology so the public have more confidence in them. Therefore, at this juncture, if we put in too many restrictions, it may be difficult. If a vehicle climbs slopes very well, it performs well, then actually it can be more expensive than other cars that do not perform that well. And these high-performance cars can be used as cars that need to be operated on a protracted basis, like taxis. So this is conducive to the development of EVs. But we agree with you, Mr. Chairman, that in the long term, we have to draw a line somewhere. But today, since the EV technology is still being developed, just like recently, a private car producer has become confident, and so it is switching to manufacturing taxis. We are a little worried if we were to put restrictions in now. And in fact, the resolution is just for an extension of 3 years. Let us wait 3 years and take another look. If the situation is different, then perhaps we can impose conditions and not provide the exemption for all vehicle types. That can be considered. But let us take a look at the present situation. On our website, we have 20-odd types that have been approved. So there are not too many. And there are just a few choices for certain kinds of vehicles. So let us allow the technology to develop more. But we understand your concern, and when we take another look at EVs later on, then we can make a decision. Well, Mr. Mock, my understanding is that there are over 300 orders. People have paid hard currency to place orders already. If the resolution is passed, let us say 1/3 eventually come to pass, then there will be 100 electric sports cars, and we are exempting FRT to the tune of an average of $600,000 per vehicle. And if you multiply $600,000 with 100, it really runs to a very huge figure. So should we use public money to give exemption to sports cars? Well, Chairman, as I said, EV technology is still developing. If we impose too many conditions, it will be difficult and it may stifle the development of EVs. Now, if we can talk about something more technical, actually in the law now, if we look at Cap 330, what is allowed is to make use of a resolution to amend the temporal issue, and no other conditions can be added. Now, this is not why I say we should not put conditions now. The main reason is, as I said, that the EV technology is still developing. If you look at different vehicle types, very few are using EVs. We believe there is a chance of technology transfer for high-performance vehicles, and that is conducive to the development of the EV technology. We understand your thinking, Mr. Chairman, but today we'd like to contribute to the development of the EV technology as a whole. We think that is more important. Mr. Frankie Yik, 2 things. One, as you said, Assistant Director, I agree with you, and that is development of the technology. Many years ago, I was in the industrial sector. The chairman and senior executives of our company loved to race boats. They would like to develop a new generation of engines so that in the end they can also heighten the performance of commercially used engines. Many people would like to develop a sports car so that in the end the technology can be transferred to the average vehicle. Well, actually, Chairman, I beg to differ from your view. Today you say the rich and famous buy sports cars as a toy, but when they do so, they would not mind whether it runs on electricity. They just would like to look at the performance of the vehicle. Say our party leader, he buys sports cars as toys, so he goes for the performance of that particular vehicle. You may talk about hybrid cars. Some of them also perform very well. And you also look at their emission standards, and if they comply with the emission requirement, then you also provide the exemption as an incentive. This is from the perspective of the environment. You should not say that if it is a luxury car, we do not provide the exemption. I think it's difficult to draw a line there. Mr. Yik, I'm not limiting people's choice of vehicles. As you said, some people buy cars as toys. It's all right if they have the money. It is up to them to use the money they have. But we are talking about public money. The FRT is a tax. If it is exempted, it would mean revenue foregone for the government. We think that these are luxury items. Why do we want to provide exemption for luxury products? We want to improve the environment, but we are talking about up to $600,000 for one vehicle as exemption. These rich people would like to show off. They don't mind spending $500,000 on a sports car, so why give them the tax exemption? We are talking about the use of public money. I understand your point. I understand, Mr. Chairman. But we are talking about legislation. How can you penalize people for buying a car as a toy? But if you buy the car to go to work, then we give you the exemption. I think it's difficult to draw a line in the law. You are providing the FRT exemption because it is good for the environment. That is the only standpoint, right, Assistant Director? You should just look at it from this perspective instead of looking at the usage of the car. Whether it can be done, it should be up to the administration to think about how the law is written. Mr. Chairman, the present FRT exemption will expire on the 31st of this month. We would very much like to move the resolution. We should be tabling it for the 26th of March council meeting so we can meet the deadline and for the new exemption to come into place on the 1st of April, so it will be seamless. Now, under Cap 330, the writing of the law is such that under Section 4, we are only allowed to move a resolution to change the date. That's it. So what we can do with this resolution is just to change the date. There is no question of adding in more conditions. But as I explained, when we would take another look at the entire matter, we had already considered whether there was the need. Mr. Frankie Yick's point is well taken. Of course, the consideration is the environment, because after all, EVs do not emit any exhaust. But as I said many times, there is another major principle to consider, and that is whether, given the present stage of technology development of EVs, does the government want to further extend the exemption? So it's not about sports cars or whatever. It's just that we should give the incentive for the benefit of technology transfer. As you know, the technology is still developing, or else we will not just have a few hundreds after so many years. Therefore, we think there should be some concessions. Now, as to whether we should categorize certain cars as luxury items, and so we should not give the exemption. Let's say we can deal with it. Let's not give the consideration that the resolution does not allow us to do this. Now, actually, what I can see is that indeed there is technology transfer, and some technology has been transferred from private cars to taxis and then to lorries or vans. So, high-performance technology is being transferred. Therefore, if that's the case, we think we should continue to provide the tax exemption. But we are not talking about having a perpetual arrangement. We are going to take another look after 3 years, so we can take an overall look. If by that time, let's not mention whether they are luxury items, if by that time we do not need to provide the exemption anymore, say for example there is mass production, so the prices have come down and people are more confident about the battery driven vehicles, then we don't need to provide the exemption. But today we think there is the need. And there is also the transfer of technology which is happening. So we think we should continue. But then, of course, there is a rider that there will be a review after 3 years. That's the consideration. Okay, 2 parts. 1, technology-wise, maybe we can ask the DOJ to let us know whether we cannot put more things into the resolution. In other words, technically speaking, is it that the resolution is really limited just to the changing of the date?
Ms. Law, please. Chairman, this is in accordance with Section 5(4) of the Ordinance. The electrical can, by way of a resolution, amend the date only. The resolution cannot change the rest of the content. So, 31st March 1997. In fact, the exemption should have expired on that date. So, the scope of amendment is very limited. So, if we want to amend the content, we can only do so by way of a bill. Is that right? So it really depends on the nature of the amendment. And if the amendment can't be effected under the ordinance, then a bill may be required to amend the ordinance. I think this is a technical issue. And if the administration agrees that such an amendment is needed, then you can table a bill in this council after the resolution has been passed. Now, of course, there is definitely some legislative means to deal with the issue. But then I want to say that we have taken into account the overall development of EV, so we think that the present course of action is more appropriate. This extension will last for 3 years, and we're going to have a review when we consider whether we need to further extend the deadline. I think I cannot agree with the administration on this matter, and that is many sports cars will benefit from this measure, and we're talking about a lot of taxpayers' money. I understand that BMW has also launched some electric sports cars. And I don't think this is something that the public would like to see. Yes, we can fully understand your concern, Chairman. But I want to say that at the moment there aren't too many high-performance electric vehicles. In fact, we want to see more high-performance electric vehicles so that there can be technology transfer to other types of vehicles. In other words, from private cars to other types of vehicles. And so we really look forward to the manufacturers doing more research to develop high-performance models. So, in fact, before the 3-year period expires, we will take a look at the situation at the time again. And we'll see whether we'll still need to use this incentive to promote the wider use of electric vehicles. And in fact, we have given the matter very careful consideration before we propose that this measure be extended for another 3 years. Yes, Mr. Wuchiwai. Thank you. Chairman. I think the discussion is less focused when we are talking about EVs and luxury items at the same time. As a controversial issue as to whether luxury items should be exempted from tax. We are here talking about EVs' contributions to better air quality versus other types of vehicles. And so I think we all agree that we should give our policy support. But then, Chairman, you've raised the issue of taxing luxury items. Definitely, this is a very controversial issue. Taxing luxury items may become a very important source of government revenue, especially in the light of the fact that there have been some projections recently concerning the fiscal position of our government in the future. And so I think whether luxury items should be taxed or not is a much wider issue. Thank you. Mr. Wu, this resolution is about the FRT, and in fact, FRT is imposed on all types of vehicles except exempted vehicles, for example, certain public vehicles. But then private cars are subject to FRT. Irrespective of whether they are luxury cars or luxury items or not. And in fact, as a progressive tax from 40% to 115%. In other words, the more expensive the vehicle, the higher the FRT. So you can see that this tax smacks of a progressive flavor. But now we are talking about total exemption of FRT. And here we're talking about luxury items, sports cars. And we also have to look at how public funds should be used. I understand that this tax is not a luxury goods tax. I understand, but then, Chairman, in fact, for electric vehicles, even if they are not luxury types, they can be very expensive. And sports, should we say that sports cars are definitely luxury cars? I don't have enough information to support such a belief. I think our policy objective is to promote wider use of EVs. We hope that more people can use EVs so that air pollution can be reduced. And then say, should we introduce a progressive element into this measure so that if the price of the car is very expensive, then the exemption may have to be taken away. But then I just want to say, Chairman, that the scope of this present discussion is really very limited. It is not that I do not agree with you, Chairman. I hope you understand. Mr. Frankie Yik. Now, I like this car. I buy it. I support environmental protection, and so I buy this car and I drive it to work. But then, are you telling me that this car is so expensive, and so you can't get the FRT exemption? And then I may decide, okay, I'll just buy a Ferrari and then drive it to work. So it seems that the government is punishing me for wishing to buy a more expensive EV. Now, I think if there is extensive use of EVs in the market, then the EPD may consider withdrawing the exemption. Maybe one day, even if there is no FRT exemption, people may still prefer EVs. It's difficult to draw the line. That's my concern. I understand your concern, Mr. Yik, and I hope that you apply the same philosophy to other people-based services, so that there will not have to be asset tests, means tests. And so, if you feel that it doesn't matter, even if a sports car costs over $1 million, so long as air pollution can be reduced, we should not take away the exemption. And I really hope that when we talk about safeguards, then I hope you agree that in fact these are basic protections, and all people should be able to enjoy the protection. Now back to this resolution. We're promoting the use of EVs. The two power companies may stand to benefit from this measure. So, promoting EVs on the part of two companies may represent an investment on their part. At the moment, there aren't too many diesel vehicles, and many private cars run on petrol. But then, if more vehicles switch from petrol and LPG to electricity or electric power, then the two power companies will stand to benefit. And so I would like to ask the administration whether the two power companies do have the responsibility to promote such use, and also concerning the charging facilities. I believe that some are provided with public funds, and who will be responsible for the future management and maintenance of such facilities? Yes, Chairman, thank you. We are promoting the use of EVs. I believe the two power companies are closely monitoring the development in this area, and I'm sure they will continue to really monitor the development. We have about 1,000 standard chargers. They're just simple installations. And for chargers installed by the government, of course, the government is responsible for their maintenance. And chargers provided by the private sector are, of course, maintained by the private sector. In fact, we are proceeding from the environmental protection angle. For diesel vehicles, petrol vehicles, and LPG vehicles running on our roads, if they are replaced by electric vehicles, then there will be far less roadside air pollution. And also, if we have a lot of cars running on our roads, and if these cars are not properly maintained, then they will give out a lot of exhaust gas. And if the emissions are concentrated in the power stations, there are a few advantages. First of all, the emissions are concentrated in the power plants, and it would be easier to reduce the emissions. And also, it's easier and more effective to control emissions from power plants than to control reduce emissions from the hundreds of thousands of vehicles on our streets. And I just want to know, that's why we really hope that more conventional vehicles can be replaced by EVs. Yes, I understand, but then the power companies will ultimately stand to benefit. Yes, I understand that we are now proceeding from the environmental protection end goal, but then ultimately the two power companies will benefit. So do they have a role to play concerning the promotion of EVs? In fact, even if they promote the use of EVs by economic means, such promotion can be viewed as their investments. In fact, the power companies have also installed chargers, but then the investments and operations of the power companies are controlled by the scheme of control agreements with the government. In fact, over the years, the two power companies set an example by using more electric vehicles. And of course, I do understand, Chairman, that if we have more electric vehicles, then the two power companies will stand to benefit.
But then, first of all, whatever they do, they are regulated by the scheme of control, and also they have also contributed to the development of EVs in that they have also provided charging facilities. Mr. Frankie Yik. Now, of course, if all vehicles in Hong Kong become EVs, then the power plants would be happy because they will make a bigger profit. But then they are limited as to how much profit they can make because it is capped at a certain percentage. And then the extra profits would have to be put into a reserve fund in order to offset the pressure on tariff increase. And second point, I'd like to mention this. In 2012, economic loss resulting from air pollution was to the tune of $40 billion. Now, if all of a sudden all our vehicles become EVs, then there will be much less medical cost to be sustained by the entire society, and we may have to pay less tax. Right, that's correct. We all understand that it is difficult to promote EVs. Let's be frank, it's not just for Hong Kong. But people who live in houses or apartments, they also think that it is not easy to make use of EVs. But then after people switch to EVs, there will be less medical cost and the air would be cleaner. That is why we are working very hard to promote EVs. We understand it's not easy at all. Mr. Yik, no other questions? Then I think that's all for a discussion on the policy. Let us look at the clauses. We need to go through the resolution. Chairman, can I please briefly introduce the resolution? It is quite simple. Please look at Section 5(4) of Cap 330. Chairman, before I go into the resolution, I think it will be easier for me to talk about Cap 330 first. The background is in the legislation, and the resolution is really extremely simple. It just changes the date. So let me talk about Section 5 and also Section 5 bracket 3 and bracket 5. So I give you the background. Under Section 5(3), it sets and states that the FRT is for the sake of exempting the FRT for vehicles purely running on electricity and which does not emit any exhaust. And 5 bracket 5 would say that the present resolution will become invalid after the electrical resolution expires. And that is what we are dealing with today. Let us go to Annex 2 or B. This is the resolution. It says, resolved that the resolution made and passed by the Legislative Council on the 14th of May 1997 and published in the Gazette as Legal Notice number 237 of 1997 as amended. And the rest states the previous resolutions and the changing of dates, etc. What is important is the schedule. The schedule is an amendment to resolution of the Legislative Council, resolution amended to repeal 2014 and substitute it with 2017. The effect is to extend the present exemption to March 31st, 2017. It is really very simple. Okay, so it just changes one date from 2014 to 2017. That's right. Any questions? I forgot to ask you the question. Do you think we should invite the public for a meeting? There is no need, right? Okay, there is no need. Any other questions? Okay. Do we need to register a stance here? Whether we support the resolution or we can allow it to go back to Council and then we can speak then. Mr. Mock, Chairman. If members agree, the Secretary for the Environment will move to pass the resolution at the Council meeting on the 26th of March 2014. Actually, that will be the last opportunity if we want to have a seamless continuation of the exemption. Understood. I myself have reservations about this. Because after all, we are talking about tens of millions of dollars of public money being used to subsidize the purchase of electric sports cars. I have that reservation myself. That being the case, of course you can still move the resolution. Chairman, we hope the subcommittee here will support the resolution. If I understand correctly, members can speak at the Council meeting. We hope the subcommittee will support us in moving the resolution, and then members can speak their mind when the resolution is moved. But I hope the subcommittee will give us its support as a subcommittee. If a vote has to be taken here. No, sorry, let me clarify something. My understanding is that the resolution cannot be amended by members. Either we support it or we reject it. Mr. Chairman, your argument, your point of view can still be discussed. Maybe on another occasion, and after this time maybe there could be the imposing of conditions. I'm sure there are different voices in society, and also how your viewpoint, Mr. Chairman, can be implemented, but I don't know the procedures. Can someone explain that to me? Our legal advisor, please. Ms. Tam. Thank you, Chairman. Members can make an amendment as long as it is within the scope of the resolution. But this time around, the resolution is just about the changing of the date. And if amendment has to be made, it has to be about the date, and it cannot go outside this scope. Thank you. Understood. if the subcommittee does not support the resolution, can the administration still move it at the council meeting for it to be voted upon? Chairman. Certainly, the subcommittee's stance will be made known to other members for reference, but the administration can still give notice for the resolution be moved at the council meeting on the 26th of March for it to be voted upon by members. And members can speak on that occasion and vote according to their own wishes. This is a positive vetting procedure, and it has to be passed by the entire council. In other words, the subcommittee's support or otherwise is not instrumental. It will be for the reference of other members, but it will not stand in the way of the moving of the resolution by the administration. But of course, we will write a report to the House, and other members will read the report for their reference. Okay, Mr. Mock. Chairman. Reflecting on the discussion of the subcommittee, I think there is propensity for support, but the chairman has some reservations about the point of the cars being a luxury item. But when we take an overall look, Mr. Chairman, given the present development of EVs, they still need support. Mr. Chairman, you may think some of them are luxury items and we should not support those with public money. But if we look at the bigger direction, in fact, it can help the development of high-performance EVs. Will the subcommittee then support the resolution? And on the 26th of March, Chairman, you can raise the point of the luxury item and express your views. So it will not negate the discussion today, because my impression is that members do buy in the direction of us providing more assistance to help this develop. But Mr. Chairman, you are just thinking why we should further benefit people who do not need the exemption. But then I think you also support the bigger direction that we should support the development of EVs. Therefore, I hope the subcommittee can support the resolution. And as I emphasized, we're just talking about a period of 3 years. Every time we extend the exemption, we will take a hard look at the development of the technology. Maybe by that time, the whether it is a luxury item is beside the point, because the technology may be so mature that we may not have to support it again. I really hope the subcommittee can support the resolution. And Chairman, you can certainly speak your mind at the council meeting. Chairman, please consider what I said. I have heard members, but of course I don't think they object to the resolution per se. And if I should speak on behalf of the subcommittee, I would conclude to say that I could not see that the subcommittee did not support the resolution. I can certainly say that on behalf of the subcommittee in my capacity as chairman. And of course, I would register my reservations. And I really hope that you will pay attention to that. And as I asked just now, there are now 592 EVs. I would like you to tell me what vehicles they are, what kinds of vehicles they are. And I hope you will monitor the situation, that is, what type of EVs have enjoyed the exemption, and report to the electrical at regular intervals. If we should see a trend that indeed quite a proportion of the exemption has gone to sports cars, then there will be a case for concern. And if the administration sees the need, you should move a relative or related amendment.
Now, concerning the number of sports cars, now I want to say that we have about 400 private cars and then 56 electric bikes, 34 lorries. And then I think there aren't too many electric sports cars in Hong Kong. But Chairman, of course, I do agree that we should from time to time report back to the Ye panel. I think the panel is a very good forum for us to discuss the progress and if we detect some problems, we'll take action. And in fact, as I've said just now, every time we seek an extension, or before we seek an extension, we'll review the situation, because we are always very careful about the use of public money. Right, so I think we've basically completed the scrutiny of the resolution. Oh, do we need another meeting? I don't think so. Any AOB items? If members want to amend this item of subsidiary legislation, they need to give notice by the 19th of March. Right? I think the meeting can be adjourned. Thank you.